Coach Sheets, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's an honor to have a very recent national champion here in the house. But first, we would love to know, what does it mean to you to be a Christian coach?
Well, first and foremost, thanks for having me on. I'm always excited to connect, and it's a great question to kick things off. I think one thing that I go back to is you don't have to be perfect, and that's been my walk with God, and where I've come to grips with our relationship is it is a very mutual relationship. I worship God. I accept God. All the things that come with that. At the same time, I think He accepts me for who I am, and I'm a very, very flawed person. I embrace that transparency. I embrace that opportunity to live and learn and fail and certainly grow. And that's where I come back to with our guys. I think it's one thing to, we talk about, and I certainly profess my faith. At the same time, I know I'm going to stand in front of them and fail, and I know I'm going to stand in front of them and fall short. And I know those things are going to happen. I'm certainly not hoping that they happen, but they do. It's part of being human, and that's the dynamic at play here. Is I know at the end of the day that I've been saved. I know that who my Lord and Savior is. At the same time, I'm out of the way of trying to be perfect. I live to walk His path. At the same time, I also embrace the fact that I am going to fall short. And I think that was something, I grew up in a Southern Baptist household, which wherever that falls on your audience is fine with me. But I know my household, and there was this expectation of perfect. Yeah. And that's just not reality. It's not how life goes. And so learning that, living that, and then obviously coming to a more personal relationship with God, and He knows my thoughts, and He knows where my heart is at. He knows what I'm trying to do, and being at peace with that. So that to me is a roundabout way to get to what I think a Christian coach can be. Just be who you are, and who you are is, we're often imperfect, but you're working at it. You're trying to get better each day.
How important is translating that message to your players, right, and coaching staff?
Yeah, it's very important. I think, one thing that I've never walked away from is having that conversation. I just haven't. And I work at a state school. That's not a great opportunity to be out at the forefront of talking religion and talking faith. But it's one thing that I was never gonna shy away from. I'm respectful. I understand the dynamic at play. At the same time, man, my job's to lead, and part of my leadership comes back to faith. I think when you really get down to the crux of belief, which is what we're trying to inspire in your players, not only belief in self, but belief in your team, belief in moments, belief in opportunity. Well, you better be talking about faith. And if you're talking about faith, there's a great parallel there to who we are as Christian athletes and coaches and as Christians overall. So I just go back to it's very important. At the same time, I am very respectful of others' walks and journeys and the path that they're on. But you hope that in the course of being free and open and sharing and hopefully witnessing at times and referencing. I always think, there's the power of a coach is comes down to our power of communication. So the opportunity to lead with your voice is one thing, but to really, I guess, pay attention to the verbiage that you choose and the messaging that you give to your team. I think a lot of that, you have ways to influence them. You have ways to spread some of that, as opposed to, hey, for the next 15 minutes here, I'm going to talk about my faith. That's not always, viewed as much as we'd like for it to be. That's not always viewed, again, in a state school situation. But you find ways through the course of teaching, explaining, obviously drawing parallels between your walk and their walk, and you're able to almost infiltrate that conversation with, this is what I think, and this is where my heart's at, and this is when I sleep at night. These are the peace that I have, and I would want that for you. At the same time, I'm going to let them walk their path and hopefully follow that example.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what God does to us, right? He gives His all to us, but He still allows us to make our own choices.
There's no doubt.
And fully knowing what the consequences are of whatever path we choose, but He does let us live our lives. And I think a lot of coaches try to micromanage their kids, or they're just so laissez-faire, hands off completely, and they don't even share that kind of message or communicate wisdom. I as you were answering, I was looking on my notes here for a quote that, you know, say many communicate but few connect, you know.
Oh man, that's great.
And that's the first excuse me, that was one of the first few times that I was like, ooh, that's true. Like, I'm always so poignant in my communication. I really just want to give information.
Sure.
That I forget to even connect and really see, is this information really valid or really impactful now? Because I don't know what they're going through right now.
And I think that's we call that feel, you know, especially in baseball. There's just you have to have a great feel for the game, feel for people, feel for moments. But that's also along the same lines. When you're talking about, as a coach, you have the opportunity to impact someone's life, you also got to have feel. And when something happens in practice or in a game, every moment is not always a coachable moment. And, you know, you've got to recognize, and once again, have feel for the moment that the player really needs to hear from you. Because there's also moments they just need to internalize. They need to work through it. They're not ready to listen yet. They're not ready to ask for help. They're just not at that place yet. And I'll tell you, that is the toughest part of coaching, is knowing that, hey man, I've watched guys go through this. I know what you're struggling with. I can solve that problem, but I just don't feel like you're ready to hear me yet, and letting them go through that. Well, it's the same way. This is, oh man, I'm getting goosebumps, but it's the same way when you're coming back to faith. And again, once again, I never profess to be, you know, the ultimate Christian. I'm as flawed as any person on this call, for sure. But like, when it comes down to you know that in their heart where they're struggling, and you know they're having a tough time working through some dynamic in their life, and you just, you know, again, and this is something I struggle with most of my life, and I've gotten better at the last few years, is the ability to let go and let God. Because I think so often, I think most of us, and especially at a younger age, we, depending on your situation, how you were brought up, you almost feel like, I know I did, felt like I needed to control everything. I needed my hand on it, and no, I'm going to make that happen, and I'm going to do this. And then you think, by the grace of God, come to the understanding that, dude, that ain't how this works. Like, the chapter's already been written. He's just going to reveal the page to you. So just let go and let God. And I think sometimes, you know, again, from our standpoint, we have players that want to play professional baseball. And you try to, in baseball, we talk about control the controllables. What can you control? Well, dominate those, and everything works itself out. Well, that's a really tough thing to do. It's easy to say, it's really tough to do. And so when you see them wanting to control all these dynamics, or they want to put themselves in a position to play professional baseball, you kind of want to step in at times and go, hey man, that path for you, it's already been written. And you just got to let go and let God. Now come back to what's in front of you today, this workout, this batting practice, this bullpen. Let's dominate these things. Let's set ourselves up. Let's obviously invest in success. But in terms of your path and where these doors are going to open for you down the road, you have to let go and understand that, man, it's going to happen if it's His will.
Yeah, that's you can't draft yourself.
You cannot. What we do as younger, we feel as if we have a hand in it, and you do to an extent, but you don't, man. You got to recognize if you're a person of faith, recognize the dynamic of who's really in charge, and let go of those reins for a little bit, and let it happen. Because it's amazing. The journey, at least for myself, the journey that I've been on, when I did let go, everything's fallen into place. When I felt like I had control, I basically choked those ideas out. I had my hands around, you know, the wrong areas, as opposed to letting go and letting God.
Yeah. You talking now, it reminded me of, I completed a Ironman 70.3 here this summer.
Wow.
And I don't look like an Ironman, but it was during the training and all those things. It's like, this is clearly obvious just looking at me. I cannot do this alone, right? I can't. There's no chance there. So, but there was moments where I got caught so much into, I need to do this. I need to get this done. And I need to, you know, it's all about me. And as I'm running, as I'm biking up this stupid hill, I caught myself just singing it's your breath in my lungs, you know, and because that was the only way I was going to get through it, you know. And during that race, it came to I came to the realization of the difference between possibility and probability. And we, so many self-help books, a lot of rah-rah speeches of, if I did it, so can you,
Sure.
and we look at these pro players and we're like, wow, if they're there, why can't I, and I was like, yeah, there's the possibility. Yes, if that person did it, so can you. Yes, you can.
Sure.
But what are the odds, right? Where is the probability that you make it, right? And I came to the realization, it's like, yeah, everybody could actually do this Ironman, but what are the odds, right? Wow. Who is actually willing to put in the work and focus on every day on the batting practices, or just going out for a run or swimming or whatever it is, it's figuring that out. That is the crux of everything.
That is outstanding. I appreciate that. It's made me better right there. I like to internalize that one. That's really good. I really,
because I got into this self-improvement journey and just reading so many books, and it's like, there's the David Goggins book called Can't Hurt Me, right? And you read that book and you're like, wow, I can do anything in this planet I can do, and I was like, well, that's true. I guess you can do. But what are the odds? What are the odds that you'll do it? But yeah. Another question I want to ask is how do you connect with your players in order to have that feel of when to talk, when not to talk? What are some of the practical things that you do on a regular basis to connect?
So one is maybe the umbrella thought to that whole question is, what's important to you as a coach, and what's important to me are relationships. I want to win. I love to compete. All those things are great. But at the end of the day, if we win, but I don't have relationships with our players, I just don't want that life. I've been there before. I coached that way. I was ego driven for 11 years of my coaching career. And I've tried to really walk the other direction, and it's relationship driven. So how do you get there? I think number one is you got to be completely transparent. And I mean, like, vulnerability times 10. And that is such a tough thing for coaches to walk towards. I think at times we may say that, or we think that we're being vulnerable, or we think that we're still guarded. It's almost like, oh, you can ask me whatever you want, but my hands are crossed. You know what I'm saying? Like you want it, and you know that that's the path, but we still put up that guard. Dude, I have been like, here I am, open arms, open chest, like whatever you want to ask, whatever you need to know, whatever helps you understand, and being completely transparent. And that is such a powerful place to coach from. Crying in front of your players. I mean, showing real emotion, letting them understand what you're struggling with. Because you know what? They're struggling with things too. This isn't a perfect dynamic where every day at practice, everyone's at 100%. There's people that
we don't have to be a walking Instagram.
This ain't Facebook life. This is real life, man. Like, and I think being able to help them understand that, because, I think we as coaches, let me unpack this a little bit. I think as coaches, we feel like we have to profess or show to them that, hey man, we got all the answers. And one word that we use a lot in our programs, I don't know. Because when you don't know, don't make something up. I don't know, man. Let me get back to you on that. Let me work on that. I'll come back to you. And I think that real power to not want to be the perfect guy in front of your team all the time shows them that they don't have to be perfect either. So I think that dynamic of transparency and vulnerability actually, as a coach, opens you up to an environment, and one that we've worked hard to craft is a failure-free environment. Is if you are going to the extent of your God-given abilities and you fail, we're okay with that. If you're not giving the effort, the championship effort, and you fail, I'm not okay with that.
That's the issue.
100%. It's a great way of giving them freedom to go out and expand those boundaries a little bit, and go out and try to get the most out of themselves. And they might fall short, but they also know there's no judgment behind that, because you're on the same journey they are. I fail all the time. I always tell, we won some great games this year, and I felt like our guys at times, they had to outplay bad coaching. Like, it's part of the dynamic of recognizing that we're all not perfect in this whole thing. I think vulnerability is a huge piece of that puzzle. I think the second thing I would bring up is this, is you can't coach the team. You've got to coach the individuals. And that was something, it maybe not a complex thought to some, but it kind of was to me on my path back to coaching was, I looked at the team as more of a collection of individuals. And this is the deeper thought of the relationship piece, where before it was like the team, and I'm just going to coach the team. I'm going to get the team right. And then you just, hey, dude, there's a bunch of individuals that if you get the best version of them, you then have the opportunity to get the best version of this team out.
Yeah.
And so you got to spend time on the individual. So every day before practice, every day, every single day, we do two things. We do meditation. We do a mindfulness training, which for me, I'm trying to help them get the right version of them between their ears. Baseball is such a game that's played literally the 15 seconds between each pitch. If you're really watching, that's where adjustments are made and decisions are made. But I think it's also helping them sort through maybe some of those dark corners in your mind, and you start to help them change your default. Well, we meditate every single day. And the other thing that I do is I hug and I tell every player that I love them every single day. I don't end a huddle without telling them that I love them. I don't really, walk around at practice and not put my hands on somebody. I'm hugging somebody today. I make sure during stretch, man, I go give every guy a hug, and whether they want it or not, whether they are mad at me from the day before or they know something's, or they know that they got to tell me something a little bit later, dude, I'm hugging them and I'm here for you, man. Whatever you got, I can handle. Yeah. And I think those things allow you to, they start to build consistency in that. That's the same dude every day. He's flawed. He's up and down just like I am, but dude, it's the same guy every day. And then I think there's a piece of recognizing that on those two fronts, we're all on the same journey, man. I just had a little bit of a head start. So they don't call me coach, just call me Sheets, but I always say I can be your uncle Sheets too. I can be that uncle that puts his arm around you and goes, hey man, here's what you need to be thinking about. Hey, this is where you're falling short. Hey, this is how you'll help. And I think there's those dynamics that I think help build a connection, but they build a relationship. And now, and this is an awesome, sorry to keep going, but
this is great.
There was moments, man, I had players come up to me as much as I think I'm helping them or looking out for them, or, I had players come up to me, coach, you okay? Coach, you good? Hey coach, hey man, you hanging in there? Or whatever those moments were, because they knew me. They knew how I internalized things. They knew what I was dealing with. I had guys that, you talk about pushing leadership, when guys feel that connection with their coach, they just start leading on their own. Like if you really want to get the most out of your team, at some point they got to start leading each other. And I think our players, I talked with one of our seniors a couple weeks ago, and he just talked about how you could tell, coach, you were at your end. Like you had given everything you had to get this team from a coach perspective. He goes, but really you were just saying we need it from a player perspective. And then we just took the reins, and that's why we ended up winning our last game. Our players wanted to win our last game. That's why we won. And that's where it comes back to that relationship of feel between each other, the deepest connection. I think those things matter. They start to show up on a daily basis.
Yeah. You mentioned, there's only a few teams every year that finish their season winning their last game,
Sure.
And you guys were one of them, winning the World Series. What is one lesson that God has taught you through this process of winning it, and then right after you won it? What are those thoughts going through your head?
Man, oh man. The one was, like I mentioned, let go and let God. And the reason that one's so fresh is, as a young coach, the only goal that I had, it wasn't even about like impact players. It wasn't even about help kids pursue professional baseball. It was, man, I really need to win a national championship. Like there's some validation that comes with that. Like there's some, like the minute you win, somebody hands you, the keys to the rest of your life as soon as you walk off the field. And I just, in my head as a 23, 24, 25-year-old, that was the goal. That was the mission.
Yeah. And God is going to say, welcome, good and national champion servant.
Yeah, 100%. And he's not giving you those keys. Like that's not so, because your heart's not in the right place. You're not in it for the right reasons. That those things aren't as dialed in as they should be. And thank God. I mean, once again, going through this journey, man, and I got out of coaching for 4 years. I call it my sabbatical. And then I came back with a new attitude, a new approach, a new mindset, almost a new lease on life, a way to rewrite my own script. And that's what I came back to was, there's this belief and this inner faith that this whole thing has been written. Now, let me back up a year. Would it make a cool story? 100%. And in the back of my head going, man, that would be really cool. But I'm not writing this book. This is God's plan. And if it's meant to happen, it's going to happen. And that takes a lot of time to work through, especially when you've been engineered to control everything. So that was one, is working through, even at the championship game, man, I slept like a baby the night before. I was the calmest dude in the dugout during a championship game because it's already been written, man. Yep. And I got to be okay with that. So I don't want to be so stressed in the first inning. Can we get the third out in the ninth? I need to enjoy this. I want to enjoy every at bat, every pitch, every moment, everything that's said in the dugout. I want to take everything in because I want to enjoy this, because if it's going to happen, if we were meant to dogpile, if it's been written, I'm getting ready to watch it happen. And if it's not our time, then I need to help, again, craft a message that'll prepare my guys to recognize they got this close to their dream, but it can prepare them for the rest of their life. And I needed to kind of keep that balance, that centered perspective. But for me, it was faith. It was faith that was driving that ability to stay centered. Post dogpile, post moment is stay humble. I think it's too easy to buy into, the accolades, and it's too easy to buy into the congrats and the, everyone wants to tell you how great you are. And I just, you have to have these people in your life. So my best friends, well, man, I hope you don't change. Yeah. And, it's one of those of, it's amazing to, once again, you can feel that ego bucket wanting to get filled up. Yeah. You can feel it. Now, ego has always been my greatest enemy. Again, as I mentioned, 11 years of coaching for myself. Yeah. That ego he is always there, and he was always wanting some of this. And I've worked hard to not fill that bucket, man. I always talk about, you got to die to your ego every single day. Yeah. And get back to what matters. What matters is others and serving others and keeping things in perspective. And that's been a really neat challenge to nothing changed. So you won your last game, but if you loved yourself before that game, nothing's changed. So I'm good. But what I'm not going to do is take in all this chatter and all this stuff and let it fill the wrong buckets. I'm trying to help it fill the humility bucket that we won, but dude, I got a list of 40 things we got to get better at. And I'm nowhere near the end of this thing. And it didn't validate anything for me. It's great for our kids and it's great for our program, and we're going to move forward. But I wasn't looking for validation out of that win. What I was looking for was, can this team maximize the best of themselves? And we did that. Now we got to get next year's team to get the best of themselves to come out. And if that is winning the last game, great. If it's not, great. But we met that goal, and it's keeping things in perspective.
Yeah. JJ Redick, the basketball player, says, you never arrive, you're always becoming.
There it is.
And it's
if you feel like you've never arrived, you've actually arrived.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I mean, there is power in that.
Yeah. Yeah. We have the men's team here at Liberty won their conference for the first time ever this year.
Okay.
And we're flying back on the same plane as them, and they're so happy. And the assistant coach who's has only been out of college, I believe, 2 years, I said, hey, this is incredible. Right? I'm an alumni of men's tennis and I work with the women's, but I'm like, I'm just so happy, And he was like, this is great. I just pray for me that this doesn't turn into my identity,
There it is.
And I was like,
Dunk cat. I'm gonna pray for that, man. And that's it. Cause man, you talk about when you can only gain perspective through experience, right? Like you can be a mature 25-year-old. Sounds like this guy. You can be a mature 25-year-old. That's awesome, man. Yeah. But you also haven't gone through, a marriage, kids, life, ups and downs, job, all those things. So you got to have that experience to have that perspective. I tell you what, to find that at a young age is, to me, it's like that secret pill we talk about as again, older coaches. Like I'm putting myself in this older category. But like, there's this pill that we wish you could give a young coach. I wish someone gave it to me and went, hey man, I know you think you've got it figured out, but you're nowhere close.
Yeah.
Take this pill and here's all the heartaches that you're going to miss out on. But then you would never change that journey because you needed to go through some of that and get humbled and get put in your place and learn and jump out and fail. But man, to grab that is huge, because it's too easy to think that winning or championships or rings or trophies, that validates anything. It just shows that you were good on that day, that season, that moment, but it doesn't change the rest of your life. You then have the opportunity today to go get better, to stay humble, to stay in the fight, to work, improve, and grow and learn and try to improve each day. And the more you do that, all that winning takes care of itself, man.
So true.
That's such a hard lesson to learn. Man, talk about grateful for a young cat like that out there in this world. That's all.
Yeah. He keeps me grounded.
That's all.
Yeah. So I'm great. And, well, Coach, thank you so much for taking the time. How can we be praying for you?
Well, again, back to what you just asked, man, I would let's fill the right buckets. And I think for all of us, let's make sure we fill the right buckets. I was in a situation this past week that there were a lot of, I would say, egos in the room. And I'll tell you what, man, I get really sensitive to that now. It kind of gets under my skin. It kind of push back a little bit. And I think I'm okay with that. I want to live in that place, because I think there's a humility there, but there's a real recognition of people. So I think continue to not just for me, but for others as well, that we walk away from the I mentality. We walk away from the me. We actually get back into us. We get back into others. And I think that's a safe place to work from.
Yeah. All right, let's pray. Dear Jesus, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you, Lord, that Coach Sheets was able to experience a national championship with his team and celebrate it and do all these cool things that comes with winning a national championship. But Lord, make sure that he is filling the right buckets every day, Lord, that he won't let his ego grow just because he won a national championship, Lord, but that he'll continue to connect with the staff and his players on a daily basis, that he'll never lose sight of what's important to you, Lord, that we know that earthly things are, don't mean anything in heaven. And Lord, I pray that you will, you continue to work in his life so that he in turn can work in his players and staff's lives to make an impact for eternity. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Coach, my last question is, you mentioned you left coaching for 4 years.
Yep.
Why was that? Is that okay if you share that?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. So 11 years in, I was the head coach my last 3, and it was all about me, man, every day. And I kind of burned myself to the end, burning myself out of the game. But my girlfriend and I, we actually found out we were pregnant. And I always wanted to coach. I was just trying to, win here so I can get the next job. And we found out we're pregnant, and this job comes open at the American Baseball Coaches Association, which is like our national coaches group, brand new job. And it's for a small school person, and they kind of wanted a coach. And I had long story short, I had 3 or 4 board members reach out to me and say, you should really think about this. And I'm like, nah, man, I'm a coach. Yeah. And they just continued to beat down my door to the point where I jumped on and interviewed, and it was a no-brainer. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And what it was, I look back as again, talk about a godsend or God moment, but to pull me out of something I thought I was doing right, to pull me into an arena where basically the job is serving others. The job was a crash course in servant leadership. That's what it was. And it took me a year to figure it out. And then once I figured it out, I flourished, and it became who I was, and re-energized me and gave me a new perspective on things and deepened relationships. And obviously, I grew so much personally, professionally, spiritually during that time that I almost felt compelled to come back to coaching. Cause it's like, hey man, I've learned all this, and what a great opportunity, but man, I can go back and do this thing again, and I can do it right. And I can hopefully be a beacon of light that maybe this might be a better path for you. Yeah. You want to chase wins, or do you want to chase relationships? Because so many of the greats have done that. And I felt compelled to move back into coaching. So it's the best thing that ever happened to me, man. But the lessons that came from that are ones I draw upon every single day.
That's great. And one more question.
Sure.
You said you do mindfulness and meditation. What are some of the apps or things that you do with your team?
Well, we don't use apps. We
Okay.
actually I've tried to build a maybe a reservoir of reps of taking teams through these meditations, and I think
Do you have a meditation voice?
I have a great meditation. Yeah, I think it's but it really does come back to feel. I think you've got to
Yeah,
teach.
correct.
You
Yep.
got to teach people how to slow down. You got to teach them how to trust their breath, not just breathe. Everyone's breathing, but to really use that breath to
Yeah.
slow your heart rate, to slow your thoughts down. You got to teach people how to navigate those thoughts. You have to teach
Yeah.
people how to visualize, because generally when we visualize, we see ourselves not having success because there's fear
Yeah.
and there's doubt in there. You've got to help them work through that. And then I think there's a point where you help individuals quickly default and change that default to trust their breath. I think when you connect with your breath, you can start to connect with your body. Once you have those elements, then it's a way to build upon. And I'm telling you, by the time we got to the World Series, we had so much, you could feel it, residual energy built up, that our kids could snap from a bad call, moment, walk, run. They could snap back to present better than any team I'd ever been around. But we also, again, we do it every single day. Our kids won't practice, they won't play without it. And I think it's only helped solidify that for us. But if anyone's interested, reach out to me. I can certainly give you we have a script that myself and Alan Jaeger from Jaeger Sports put together that gives thoughts and points. I've got live sessions. We've got some podcast episodes that we actually did a guided meditation on air to help guys through. And we plan on sharing much more of that as we get back into the fall, because the outpouring of us sharing that this is something that we do and then you win, it compounds itself. Now all these people are going, oh, it must be something to it. And it's like, it was great before we won, but it's something that can really change the way your players view themselves, because it's literally, you're giving them a gift of being intimate and getting familiar with who they are. And once you know who you are, now you can help the best version of you show up.
That's perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was great.
Awesome. Thanks again for the opportunity. I appreciate it.